Today, I want to talk about simulation theory. So, there's a lot more talk about this, and it's becoming more and more popular. In some ways, I want to say, why are we so surprised? And also, there's nothing new about this. Um, but I also want to give you a different spin on it, a different perspective. And to do that, I'd like to digress to tell you why I'm bringing this up in the first place. So the other day, I was on a walk wearing polarized sunglasses. I was walking through my neighborhood and I noticed the sunlight coming through a chain link fence and the way that the sunlight was coming through the chain link fence and how some of it wasn't coming through. It was bouncing off into the other direction towards the sun or in lots of different directions because it was a shiny black chain link fence. It was painted or coated, and it was reflecting the sunlight in all different directions. Some of it was going through, some of it was bouncing around everywhere. The way it was hitting the grass was very chaotic, and you can see this very well with polarized sunglasses. And of course, I saw the shadow that was cast by the fence. And it got me thinking about what was really happening, that sunlight was falling on the earth in a large pattern, where it was not obscured by the clouds in that specific locale where I was standing. And it was much more coherent before it hit the fence, because I've been learning about coherent and incoherent frequencies, and in this case, the visible light spectrum. So it became much less coherent and much more chaotic as the light attempted to pass through the fence and it cast a shadow. And I thought about that term in our language, cast a shadow. It implies that something is left or placed there. And in fact, when we look at physics, it's quite the opposite. It's the absence of light. Uh, so it's interesting that we think that something casts a shadow, but really it's something being missing for all intensive purposes. So the other thing that occurred to me is that all this information is passing through my optic nerve. Okay, so the sunlight is coming down, it's hitting the fence, it's bouncing off the fence, some of it's going through, hitting the grass, it's bouncing off all these objects, hitting my eyes, going into the optic nerve, being processed by my brain into a meaningful image, a three-dimensional image that really only exists in my brain. The matter's there, it sits before us everywhere, you can touch it. Although we also know from science that matter is mostly empty, and that part of what makes it exist is that it vibrates at a certain frequency that we can interact with. And a lot of the things that exist that aren't tangible, they exist at frequencies that we can't perceive or interact with. But they're still there. A lot of them are measurable. Some of them we can't measure yet. But I digress. All of that said, these things are happening. By the time I'm processing them and making meaning of them, they happened in the past. Every single moment that we live is, if you were to look at it that way, a simulation. It's a hologram. Everything we see, by definition, is a hologram in our brain. So that said, we shouldn't be so surprised. That's what it is, right? I don't think there's anything nefarious about that. If you were to look at Itzhak Bentoff's work and his proposed model of the universe, you might find some interesting things there to look into. If looking further into the hologram, as it were, is of interest to you. But all of that to say, lots of ancient cultures kind of already knew and espoused this. So I'll give you one example, and that is the Maya and the Leela. And this refers to what some people poetically characterize as the dance of the universe, which would be the workings of the cosmos, like the entire encompassment of time itself, all it is and all that isn't, right? But by contrast, there's the everyday hour, what we perceive as reality, which is a narrow band of even the electromagnetic spectrum, right? And that's all backed by physics, folks. So I hope this was a fun one for you. I got a lot more where that came from. Any questions, let me know down below in the comments. I love making these kinds of videos. I'll keep making them. As always, be gifted. Stay blessed.